cheese making. So we're going to be making cheese today. We're going to have another shot at Wensleydale because I made enough a mess of the first attempt. I did save it though. We'll see if it actually turns out, but I've got my doubts. So here we've got everything set out. Got cheese salt, rennet, 6 litres of non-homogenised milk, our starter culture, 2 1/4 cups of water from the kettle cooling down so that's non-chlorinated, our calcium carbonate in that bottle there, cheesecloth and our mould for the cheese, a whisk, and I'll explain why I've got a whisk out, and importantly, here we go, isopropyl alcohol. That's for a quick nip every now and again to keep us going. No, it's not. I think that stuff will kill you. But that's to help sanitise or sterilise our equipment. I have boiled all the metal equipment and dipped our cheese mould in the boiling water for a few minutes, or a couple of minutes, or a minute, somewhere around there. But we're going to spray everything with this isopropyl alcohol just to make sure. I use this a lot in my mushroom growing, so I've got big bottle of it out the back. Don't buy it in little bottles like that. That little bottle of IPA I bought because I'd run out, and that cost me I think $10 or $11 from the local electronics store. I bought 5 litres for $50. So if you're going to use it, buy it in the big lots. Right, now another thing we're going to be doing, which I picked up from Gavin. Gavin's at the Little Green store, I think. I'll check that. But if you look up the Cheese Man or Curd Nerds, you'll find Gavin, and he does great videos on exactly how to make cheese, whereas mine are a bit of trial and error. Anyway, what we're going to do is we boil water, and we're going to sit our main milk pot on top of the water, and it means we can heat things up a little bit more gently and slower, which was difficult to do when I made the cheddar using the gas directly. Our first step is to get the milk out of the bottles and into here, but we quite often have an issue with the non-homogenised, and that is a large lump of cream gets stuck in the top. Didn't this time, so that's good. Give it a good shake. Milkshake. They still tend to be very large lumps of cream at the top. Like this time it is too. We got it out, I think. Yep. Once we get a little bit more practice at making cheese, I'm going to try it with non-homogenised milk, and I believe, and I'll check on this on the interwebs, adding a bit more calcium chloride will help with the curd setting. But this milk is really expensive, so I was thinking if we could get it a bit cheaper, might be nice. But if it doesn't turn out, of course, it won't be cheaper. Right, it's good fresh milk, used by 23rd, which is, what, 10 days away? The reason I have the whisk out, I'll give them a quick spray, even though it's been in boiling water, just want to make sure, is when we first tried this Wensleydale, just let that alcohol evaporate. When we did this Wensleydale last time, I didn't get rid of all the lumps of cream. So if you come in, you can see large lumps of cream. The instructions said nothing about it, but I'm going to try and, not homogenise it, but dissolve that cream as we heat it up. As I mentioned earlier, we're going to be using a double boiler to heat this up. So, pot of water, slightly smaller than this fella. We sit it on top. And I think I've got the wrong one, that's going to fall off. Okay, so we'll pop this on the hot water. Make sure it's reasonably well centered. We'll get our temperature gauge. And again, making sure everything's nice and sterile, including my hands. Right, let's pop the thermometer in there. And we need to get this up to 30 degrees. That cream is slowly dissolving. Amazing nobody mentions this in all the videos I watch. They don't mention this cream that sits on top of the non-homogenised milk and having to dissolve it. But we had great lumps in the wrecked Wensleydale, as we're calling it, and I don't think that's a good thing to have. How's the temperature of our water going? Good, nice and cool. So we can actually dissolve our rennet. You want to put, actually I'll just test the temperature. Yep, it's cool. 2 tablets of rennet. And 3 ml of calcium chloride. That's almost 3 ml. A little bit more. Give that a wash. There we go. So if we could just let that dissolve, that can sit there for a little while. And let's give this another whisk. Much better. So there's still a few little bits in there. So we'll keep whisking it until it's gone away. See? Let's see if I can catch some little bits, like so. I bought this because this little gauge is great for just keeping an eye on the general temperature, watching it rise. I don't think it's accurate enough, so I went and bought a relatively cheap digital thermometer. And we can use that to get a more accurate temperature, I think.
You can't see it, sorry. Yeah.
12.13 degrees. I've got a way to go yet. Okay, that's just hit 30 degrees. Sitting around 29.9, 29.7, 29.6. Right, so I think that's about right. So we're going to take that off the heat. Yeah, it shows just above 30 on the analogue one. And 31 on the digital, so they're pretty close. Now we need to stir in our calcium chloride. Let's get a spoon. And we'll need our culture. The alcohol dry off. So in goes our calcium chloride. This is our mesophilic culture, just a Mad Millie one. Sprinkle that across the top. Should have taken that out. That's right, it can sit there. We'll leave that for 5 minutes to hydrate, and we'll give it a stir in. If you come in and have a look, it's been 5 minutes letting that culture rehydrate, and now we've got to stir it in for a minute or so. Make sure the calcium chloride's all through it. I'm also checking to make sure that there's no more lumps of cream. It seems like we've got most of it. Okay, let's check the temperature one more time. Good. Now we cover it and we let that ripen for 45 minutes. That stayed beautifully at 30 degrees by sitting on top of the double boiler there, so that's good. It's been 45 minutes since the culture was put in. We now add our dissolved rennet and we stir for 1 minute. No more, no less, no more. Thou shalt count to 3 and 5 is definitely out. That is a Monty Python reference to the holy hand grenade. My spoon, and we stir while adding the rennet. and no more than a minute. So we'll just keep a fairly close eye on that. Make sure it's all mixed through properly. I think that's well mixed. So we will stop there. All right, let's cover that up and set a timer for another 45 minutes. Let that set. Okay, it's been 45 minutes. We're going to check to see if the curd has set, and we do that by sticking our knife in and then seeing if it breaks cleanly. Which it does. I think that's okay. So we're going to cut this into 1/2 inch or 1 centimetre cubes. We'll do that just by slicing that way. Then this way. I'm hoping I will have a cheese harp soon if my friend Naz manages to build me one, which will make the next bit a lot easier, which is trying to cut this way. Alright, so that's cut reasonably well, I think. Let's look at our instructions again. We need to stir for 10 minutes, so I'll set a timer. And I'm just breaking up any really large bits which we get because I haven't got a cheese harp. There's a lot of stirring in this cheese. Now, I mentioned this is a Mad Mill kit when I first got it, but I'm actually following Gavin's recipe here rather than the one that's in the Mad Millie book, because the Mad Millie one looks too much like cheddar. Really didn't seem any different. Should have a closer look to see what the difference is. But Gavin Webber's one is very different and a lot more work. Right, so I'm going to continue stirring this for 10 minutes and we'll come back and have a look. Alright, let's get our temperature gauge back in, back on the double boiler, and we've got to heat it up now to 35. Slowly, but that double boiler will take care of the slowly bit for us. Once it's at 35, we shall keep stirring it for 2 hours, but not continually. We'll just come back and stir it every now and again. So what are we at? 30. And I'll leave it on the double boiler so it maintains that 35-degree heat. So this has been sitting at its 35 degrees-ish for 2 hours, stirring every 10 or 15 minutes or thereabouts. So we're now ready to put it into here and do our draining stage. The curds are quite loose in there, so I might try pouring it in, I think. See if I can do this without spilling everywhere or knocking the camera. Or moving the sieve too far out of the way. Slow that down while we're getting a little bit closer. Before we get our hands in there, the old isopropyl alcohol. And now we'll drain the rest out. Just break that up. We're going to come back and we're going to break this all up every 15 minutes for the next 2 hours. So we'll tie this up let it drain, and come back in 15 minutes. It's been 15 minutes, so we'll now break the curd up. We need to crumble it, because that has gone quite solid now, hasn't it? Again, very clean hands. We're just going to break it all up into small pieces. There we go, you can see it's all clumped together there. I wonder if this is anything like cheddaring, where you slice the cheese and stack it up. I'm assuming it's to allow the curd to dry out a little bit more. Get as much way out of there as we can. I don't know. I'm just following the instructions. Try and make sure we don't drop it, and also we don't spill it. Let's cover that up again, just to keep any dirt out. And if we look in here, you can see quite a bit more waste come out. So another 15 minutes. Right, second 15 minutes has elapsed. Let's see what it's like. Has it all clumped together again? Not as badly, but yes, it has. Clumping a bit still, but nowhere near what it was that last time. We'll have a look how much whey's come out. It's still a bit of whey coming out. Back in it goes. Cover it up. And come back in another 15. We've crumbled this up 8 times over the last 2 hours, every 15 minutes. It's become rather dry, but now it's time to salt it. And I think it's got a reasonable amount of salt in there. I'm going to put 2 teaspoons of our cheese-making salt in here. So let's get this set up so you can see what we're doing. Now this is our proper cheese salt, and it doesn't have the anti-caking agents in it that table salt has, and of course it's not iodinized, has no iodine in it. So let's get our cheesecloth out. By the way, I have boiled this cheesecloth. We will use that in the basket shortly. Let's get a teaspoon measure. So I've got this in 2 plastic bags because one of the bags split, but also not having a caking agent in it means if we get moisture in there, it will be very clumpy. 1 and 2. Right, I think the term that Gavin uses is going to mill this through, but 1 second, we have one other thing to do. We're going to be putting our pinkies in here, so we need to use our isopropyl alcohol on the hands again. In case you're interested, if you look at the hand cleanser we all used madly during COVID, it was 70 to 80% IPA, and this is 99.8, so just a little bit more potent. And mill this through. I'll make sure it's really well mixed in. I think that's reasonably well mixed. And now we get our cheesecloth again. And our press. Try not to get too many creases in it. Otherwise you end up with creases in the cheese. And I'll get a cup. This is freshly washed. Gavin reckons you should half fill this, then put some dried sage leaves in, and then fill the rest. But I want to see what the cheese is like just on its own, because we haven't made this before. And you'll notice this is really very, very different to our first attempt. Well, you'll notice if you have a look at the video, which I haven't finished yet. I'm going to wait to see what it tastes like. And for one of the next steps, we need to let the pressed cheese dry, air dry at this room temperature to form a rind. And that took forever with that other cheese. So, as I said, not holding out any hope for it. So we've got it in the cheese press. Oops, I'm going to do that. Lay our cheesecloth over the top. Try not to get too many creases in it. Like so. But we'll just get it out the way of our... Just getting the cheesecloth out the way of our pressure thing. There we go. And it's 5 kilos, but not very long. Let's find the scale. And remembering, we actually have a 5 mark. Now this is rather interesting. I've got rust on this thread already. And there's our 5 mark. Right there. So 5 kilos, there it is there, and we can see the 5 mark on there, sort of. And we leave it like that for 15 minutes. So the 15 minutes has gone by. So we're about to take our press off. Now to reduce a fair bit. Let's pop our cheese out carefully. Let's unwrap it. Now, it's going to be very fragile, so let's turn it very, very carefully. There we go. We'll wrap it up again. Pop it back in our cheese mould. Try to get that nice and flat inside. Put our follower back on. Now it had sort of gone on a bit of an angle, so we'll try and straighten it out a little bit. The cheesecloth around there. And let's wind it up to 25 kilos, I believe. Let me just check. 20 kilos, not 25. Now I'm going to back that off and just do it again because I want to see if it's flattened out a little bit. Don't want it on too much of an angle, which seems to be an issue with this cheese press. The follower tends to tip. And that's gone a little bit straighter, so that should be all right now. And here we have it, sitting in this bowl to collect the whey as it comes out. It's got it set to 20 kilos. Hopefully you can see that on there. And it's got to stay like that for the next 12 hours at room temperature, which luckily we have air conditioning because room temperature here isn't cool. So we'll put that aside, come back tomorrow morning. 12 hours later, well, it's a bit more than 12 hours, but this has been pressed at 20 kilos overnight. We shall loosen it off and see how our pressed cheese has gone without you taking a bite. We should have called him Gromit. Or Cheddar. Would that be a better name for you? Right, that should do us. Quite a bit of whey came out of it. Oops. And upside down. And yes, it leveled out quite well. Before we had a follower at a bit of a slope, but we've evened that out. All right, let's get that out of the way. Take our follower out. And let's see how our cheese turned out. Oh, very nice. Peel that off. It's definitely quite solid now. There we go. So here we are, all unwrapped. As you can see, it's quite firm now. It's reasonably well formed. We did end up with a few creases in there like there, but that won't affect anything. I'll probably just slice that bit off, and we leave it to air dry for several days until the rind forms. We'll then wax it and put it in our cheese cave to age for about 3 weeks, maybe 4. So this is a proper Wensleydale, I hope, unlike our first attempt, which was, I believe, a disaster. We've done the waxing before, so we're not going to video that again. We shall pop this away to dry and see how it tastes. If you made this Wensleydale yourself, let me know. How'd it go? Did it taste right? Has anyone actually tasted Wensleydale from the factory? That'd be interesting to know. Enjoy life. Like, subscribe, bell icon, blah, blah, blah. And I'll catch you in the kitchen.